Hey everybody, welcome back to Woodworking Wisdom. My name's Colwin and today we are going to be doing, and I've got to get this pronunciation right, Kintsugi Bowls. So I've got my bit of paper beside me here just to where I've made some notes to explain. So I'm going to grab that a minute. So translated roughly means golden joinery. So the idea between Kintsugi Bowls, and this was one of your ideas, it's something that you guys gave me as a suggestion. Basically, you'll see this in a lot of Japanese pottery where it was a way of repairing bowls or broken pottery, and generally it was done with tree sap and coloured with gold leaf, those sorts of things. And so you'll see it where you've got these lovely golden veins. But then later on, other materials were added to change the colour. Now this goes along again. I've been doing a little bit of research, and it goes along with the old Chinese thought of, and again my pronunciation I'm unsure about, but wabi sabi, seeing beauty in the flawed or imperfect. I love that. I really love that, because you know what it's like a lot of the time with a lot of the turning we do, we're always seeing our own flaws, our own imperfections in the things that we're making. So this is what do they call it? Perfect imperfections. I'm hoping that that you'll go along with that one. What I've got here is not strictly a broken piece of pottery or broken piece of timber. This is a piece of timber with lovely, I say lovely, it will be lovely, with splits in. So the tree that I've got is a piece of oak, and we're going to go nice and close into this just to show you. I've done a little bit of prep to this one. But this was a tree that a friend of mine had. It died standing and then fell over. So the outside of it was all grey. It was split, and I mean properly split, big splits. All I've done here is I've added a resin with a pigment in it and poured the resin into those cracks. And I've protected, or not protected, but I've stopped the resin from flowing by putting these little bits of plastic, and I'm going to start peeling them away for you. This is a piece, or this is a piece of an old plastic milk carton that I've just cut up and then hot melt glued it to the outside edge. So when I take them all off, you'll start to see those cracks go into the timber. This is ECOPOXY with a metallic mica type powder put into it. Links are underneath the video, but this one is called what's this one called? This one is called black, I can't remember what it's called now. What is it? Caviar. Yes, black caviar. Sorry, I'm not used to caviar. I've only eaten the cheap red stuff. This is supposed to be caviar coloured, so I guess the proper black stuff. But look at that. Look how nice already. We haven't even finished the bowl yet, and how ready that looks with those black streaks running down through it. So hopefully, going along with the old, the thought that we're making something nice out of something fairly broken. So perfect imperfections. So look, this is a rough turn piece. I've told you that already. It's nice and dry. I'm going to use a wooden dome in the sea jaws. Okay, and by the way, if you're using chat, hoping that I'm going to see your questions, we're not quite live, so you're seeing this in my time tomorrow. Okay, so I won't be there to answer, but someone will be. You know what it's like. Whatever questions you have, I will get to them eventually. So fire away with any questions, and we'll email you back with those questions. So look, what we're going to do with wooden dome, we're going to just pop that over. I'm going to use the tailstock just to support, and then we're going to rough shape, take out the existing outside shape, correct the foot. All right, give us a nice shape there, and then we'll finish the shaping the inside. So the top, I poured the resin over the top as well, and I'm going to leave that. I want to have that showing. That's going to be part of the bowl, just to match in with the cracks that we've got going on down here. I'm quite excited about this. It's almost like unwrapping a Christmas present. You're not quite sure what you're going to find, and I'm hoping that they're really quite striking against the lovely colour of the oak in this case. We're putting oil on this, so we'll make that even nicer. But let's start by lay speed to 0, turn the machine on, and roughly shaping. Well, I say roughly shaping just to start with. There we are. I'm going to use a 3/8 or 10mm bowl gouge to start us off. The speed I'm turning at the moment is around about 1,000 revs. We're safely held in, everything's locked down. So we're going to start just cleaning off the excess And in case you're wondering, I've actually, once I put the pieces of plastic on the outside with hot melt glue, I poured the resin and then I put it in my pressure pot. However, you wouldn't have to. This sort of thing, you know, it's not a deep pour or anything like that, so you'll get away without a pressure pot if you want to. Okay, now before I go any further, I can't wait. I'm going to stop and have a quick look. Wow, so far they've turned out far better than I've ever expected. Those cracks have been really nicely filled. And the other thing, of course, as well as filling the cracks, it's going to strengthen the piece if you've got those cracks there. Normally that would be quite weak in these areas. But look at that, they're looking really nice. So I'm chuffed with that. I'm not going to say that I've done loads of these. This is the first one I've ever done, just to match the theme. So I'm really pleased with that. We are. Now let's have a look at that. That smells absolutely gorgeous, that timber. Oh, I think we're good. I've missed one there. Look, there's the crack without anything in. Never mind. That's lovely, that resin. So let's just clean up the base, decide whether we're going to change any of that shape. That looks good. I'm happy with that. Am I going to clean the base up? I think we're going to make it a slightly flatter piece. The curve is quite extreme at the moment. I think I'm going to calm that curve down a little bit. I'm loving this, the way this is coming around here. This is really looking nice. So I think we'll just flatten it to increase that. And look how far that resin's gone down there. It's gone right the way. The other thing is, of course, every cut you make, the pattern will change a little. There we are. That's where I want it to be. That's where I want that shape to be. I'm really pleased with that. That's turned out far better than I would ever have thought. So fantastic. The other good thing with this sort of project, of course, it's not going to use a massive amount of resin. It solves a big issue. You know, these split timbers that sometimes you get. You've got a lovely piece of wood, but what you're going to do, it's all split. So some people will look at that as a true imperfection, as opposed to this. Like I say, following that theme of perfect imperfection, or what I like to say, a £10 feature or a $10 feature. For every one of those, that's another £10. Alright, so that's if you're selling them, of course. But that makes that piece unique, completely unique. You're never going to get another one like it. So yeah, really, really good. Let's sand that one up. So that was nice and quick. So we're going to sand it up, then we're going to grit the base. We're going to take the centre out, sand the inside, then back in here again just to clean up this or take off that base. So we're good at the moment. The timber's looking after me really well. It's going to sand really well. It's certainly cutting very well. However, we're going to have dust extraction on now, so a little bit of noise. We're going to go down through the grits. I'm going to use a bowl sander as well. So I'm going to start with 100 grit, work my way through. 100, 150, 240, 400, and we'll finish with a 600 because of the resin. So what we're doing, we're going to do our little bit of investigating with the first grade of abrasive. What I mean by that is just seeing where we need to pay extra attention. So let's have a brief look. A little bit of tearing going on there, you can just see that in the camera, so a little bit more attention there. Just going to bring my dust extractor a wee bit closer. There we are, that's doing it, it's all going down there now. Right, we'll have another check before we go down to the next grade. Do a little bit up there. Let's go with a bowl sander, look. And we'll just pop that bowl sander in the drill, give it a little bit more pressure, and I'll do it without the lathe running as well. So around about 180 grit. If you brace it against your body, you can actually target the areas that have problems without softening that lovely natural edge. There we are. Because the fear is, if you're heavy sanding that top edge, you're actually going to soften these leading edges here, you see. So be a little bit careful how much sanding with the lathe running you do. There we are, so that was a 180, so we can go to a 240. We'll do the same thing. Leave that there just for a minute. I'm going to use a 150 down the bottom here. There we are, 240. Nice, I think we can go straight up to 400 already. So 400, there we are. Again, we'll start without the lathe running. Used to do your top edges. And then finish up with a 600 by hand. There we are. Now I won't do anything in terms of oil finishing just yet. The reason I'm not going to do any finishing is I've still got this to finish here, and if I oil finish this then do that, I'm going to have a problem sanding that area. It's going to clog the paper up, so we're not going to oil that just yet. So we can turn them over now. That's that, the sanding of the outside done. Okay, and we're ready just to flip it over. Again, like I said in the sea jaws, so we'll take out our little wooden drive dog. We're going to come back to this later on. This is going to be used just to do that final bit of cleaning up of the underside. So that will go in our chuck. There we are, and we can think about hollowing out. So I'm going to just remove the tailstock because I'm going to have to sweep my handle around quite a lot. So same tool rest and the same bowl gouge. Actually, we're going to go with a 10mm 3/8 bowl gouge, and we're going to check everything about this top, that nothing's touching the tool rest. Make sure everything's nice and firm. I do not want the tool rest to slip whilst I'm doing this bit, because that finished edge here, that's going to be, it's quite important that that's flawless. That's what we're going to end up with. So being resin, if it's touched by the tool rest, it will damage. So I'm going to start with a small 1/4 inch or 6mm bowl gouge. What I'm not going to do with this piece in particular is go too thin. This sort of piece, because we've got that really lovely natural edge, go too thin, we're going to lose that. So in this piece, or this natural edge alone, I'm going to stay fairly thick. Probably about 6mm would be nice on this one. Right, let's stop. I think we're almost at the end of the natural edge, so we're going to stop now just to see if it actually looks right. And I think that does. I think we're pretty good there. I'll do one more very small finishing cut, but then I think we're good to go. The thickness is working. So it just goes to show you that thin doesn't mean good in every piece you do. In fact, let's just go up lay speed a bit now, because we've released a lot of the weight. There. That's enough with the 1/4 inch. So if I go back now to my 3/8 or 6mm, I'm just going to blend in the two join lines. Gone blunt. The trouble is with this resin, it does blunt the tool fairly quickly. So I've got 3 gouges ready to go here. So when one goes blunt, we can go over with the other. And what I'm doing is, where you leave off from your final cut of the top section, when you do your next lot of cuts, there can be a join line sometimes, so just make sure you blend those in so you don't struggle when it comes to sanding. Otherwise, yeah, you'll have to put extra care or extra sanding in that area, which means you'll make it slightly thinner. Right, there we are. Let's stop. We're going to check, because we're now completely past the natural edge. Is it an even thickness? It is. And have we got rid of the join lines? And we have. So there, basically, we're now just like normal bowl turning. We're into solid timber. So again, let's stop, we'll check. Are we even? Yeah, staying even. Oh, I'll be honest with you, the timber is turning beautifully. It's giving me lots of favours here. Just making sure everything misses that natural edge. When I do these, I also, as well as checking here, make sure that down the bottom of the collar, so right down the bottom where the Taurus goes into the banjo, make sure that doesn't hit as well, because if you go bigger in size on these natural edges, that's an area that can be prone to catching. So always make sure that when you've stopped the lathe and adjusted something, you do a complete revolution without the lathe running. So do that by hand just to make sure, and then you're okay. Just that resin is making that horrible noise. Now we're into good timber. Nearly there. Bevel rub, push down, just do that final finishing cut. I've got one eye on the chisel tip there, and I've got one eye on what's happening right here, right at the top. I want to make sure that this tool doesn't touch the natural edge. And you may find that you have to tweak the grind of your gouge if it's getting that way, especially deep ones, deep bowls. Now, that's fine. I'm happy with that. That's gone far better than I could have ever expected. The timber's looked after me. We've got a good even wall thickness all the way down through. The cuts are looking nice. Good sharp tools, of course. You know, look at that effect that we've got there. Those striking lines coming through. I think the colour choice is brilliant. I was going to look for a gold to really replicate what the guys used to do, but I'm happy. That black is really shining against that lovely oak, and especially this one down here. This has worked really well. So I'm chuffed there. It's good. Excellent. So again, back to sanding. So let's get everything out of my way. I'm going to power sand because I've got a little discrepancy, I'm going to call it here. So you can just see a line in there, and I think that's going to take a little bit of work with the hand sanding, and also I'll end up blending over or buffing over these sharp edges, and I want to keep them really precise, really important. So what abrasive have I got? Let's go, I'm going to go 120, which sounds a lot, but we'll get rid of it fairly quickly. Again, dust extraction. One thing to remember, that I'm not wearing any dust masks or protection for my lungs because I'm talking to you. When I'm at home, full face shield, and I've also got fresh air blowing in front of me. I'm taking every other precaution I can, so I've got my dust extractor really, really close. But you guys, you have no reason to not wear dust protection. Dust mask, at the very least a paper mask, at the very best blown fresh air. Okay, so I'm only doing this for this reason alone. So we're going to sand that inside now. Got a 120 grit, just so it does the job nice and quick. So I'm just bracing the drill against my body. I think that should be okay for that first grit. So I'll go back in there now. I'm going to go with a 150 instead of the 100, I think. Now watch your arms, your hand. I'm supporting my hand here. Okay, making sure that I don't slip. Yep, I think we can go to the next grade. So let's go to a 180. One that isn't too badly used. 180 without the lathe running again. We're just going to do the next part. We are. I'm going to go back in with 240 by hand. So it said that these bowls, these Kintsugi bowls in pottery, became so popular that they even started making pots, smashing them to repair them with the gold veins. I quite like that. I'm not saying that we go and raid our firewood piles now looking for split bowl blanks, but it's another way of embellishing or making something from those imperfect pieces. There we are, good. Right, so 240 on the old power sander, and then we'll go to the 400s. There we are. So now 400 grit. So in both power sanding and in hand. I'll start with the hand. There we are. Now final bit of sanding just with a 600 grit. If you've got pots that are bigger than this, you may think or realise actually that it's a little bit too dangerous to get my hand inside. What about using something like an old squash ball on a piece of stick? You can use Velcro on there, you can use that to sand inside. There we are. Let's have turn the extractor off. We'll have a look at this. I think that's turned out really, really well. With resin, don't worry too much if you see very fine scratches in it. I'm going to show you why in a minute. If you're using oil, they will immediately disappear. Let's brush off the dust from the top and reveal that shine. We're going to put oil on it again as well, so that will really jump out at us. There we are. Very different look to a bowl, and I think it's working really well. So let's go with a bit of oil. I'm stuck with oil at the moment. I've got one oil, which is fine. Oils, but I was going to go finishing oil, but I put my hand straight on the food safe oil, which is going to work perfectly. Let's go, and we'll rag it on instead of brush it on just today because the rag is nice and close. And I'm not going to skimp. We're going to put a decent amount on. I'm going to sand it in, and I might even put some more on. What happens when you're sanding oil in is you're raising the grain and taking off, creating that lovely wood and dust slurry, which then fills the grain, and that creates a really soft, silky feel to the workpiece after. That's when I would encourage people to pick it up. Do not touch on your stand if you're selling work. Get these pieces in people's hands. That's the clincher. Let's bit on the top there. There we go. Put a little bit more on again later on when we finish the back side. What a lovely colour that is. Right, a wee bit of hand sanding in the middle, lathe speed to 0, turn the lathe on. I say lathe speed to 0 because if you don't, you're going to get a face full of oil. So nice and slow to start with. 600 grit, I'm not worried about any loss of detail by sanding over leading edges because it's only 600. It'll take a while to sand away any leading edges. A little bit of a buff. That will need, if you want to put more coats on, that'll need 24 hours just to dry, to set fully. What I like to do is put a couple of coats on and then put it on the buffing wheel, get it clean with the buffing wheel. Right, so that's the inside done. Matt, can we just grab a quick pic of the inside there? Look at that, how nice that colour is and how dark those lovely bits of resin come through. Remember, it's a metallic pigment in there. CAVIAR is the name. Like I say, all the links are in the details below. So we're going to take that off. Just on the overhead cam, we'll just show you the inside. We've got those little eyes coming forward. Now normally, if that was left and we didn't put anything in there, I'd have had to turn past that. They would be big voids, big cracks that I couldn't get or couldn't avoid. As it happens, they've actually become lovely features. Okay, right then, so we're going to put on our wooden drive dog again, and in that I'm going to put some tissue because now we've got a finished surface, so I don't want to get that finished surface damaged. So some pieces of just tissue or router matting. You've seen me use router matting before. It's a great effect. Either of those for this instance will work well. I've got some tissue right at hand here, so that's just going to go over the top. That can go over that. Again, make sure everything's nice and tight. We've got no movement there. It's quite a thick, chunky bowl. We've already discussed that, so I'm not too worried about how tight I do things. If it was very thin, just be a little bit careful and just feel how the join here is. So test it. Is it turning? Is it enough power within the live center there to drive everything? And there is. Lathe speed to 0. Turn the lathe on. Okay, I'm going to go with a nice small bowl gouge, so a little 1/4 inch or 6 mil. And finish the shape. You may decide that you don't want to go straight down, you might want to flare back out again. Very often, and this is a little, not a secret, but something that doesn't necessarily happen on purpose. I might think if I carry on following that shape around, I'm going to run out of base. So I might want to flare back out again. I haven't told anybody that, so it's just between me and you. If you wanted to bring that shape around completely, so not go into a double curve, then you just have to shorten it a little bit, flatten the base off. But this is working. I think that's about right, so flatten the base off. Remember, you can go through the bottom of a bowl equally as easily from the back side as you can from the inside. So think about that, you know, understand how deep you've gone. Happy with the shape there. I'm not going to take any more off that little pin just yet. I want to sand the outside now, and then once I've done that finishing with all that pressure on the outside of the bolt, then I'll take a little bit more of that away just before we finish that section. So I'm just going to stop just to check to make sure there's nothing I'm not sure or haven't seen, not sure about. But then we can go straight into hand sanding, maybe a little bit of power sanding if you want to. I'm going to start with 100 grit just to blend in that area. Dust extraction, Colwin. We are, so that was 150, so now we're on to 240. $400. And then finally we're going to do 600 now, but we'll also do 600 once we put the oil on in a minute. Stop, check, have a look. Happy with that. Happy with that. Let's just take a little bit more of that bottom pin away, and I'm going to do that with a parting tool. Just careful. What I would do at home when I'm not demonstrating is slightly different from what I do in front of people. I'm not going to go down quite so far. So I want you to see this finished. I think we're about there. As far as I dare, anyway, at this point. Okay, let's put some oil on that. Now, I want you to watch as we put this oil on how lovely those cracks become, because that resin will just jump out. Take a little bit of that dust away. So I've just come back. Oh, yesterday I was travelling back from Sweden. I've just done a show at Swedendros in Vaxio. I do apologise for the Swedish watching for my pronunciations again. But I'm going to show you some pictures. Next week I should be back live. So I will show you some pictures of our adventures in Sweden next week. Those lovely veins popping through now. Look, really, really pretty. It's the first time I've tried this, and I'm really quite chuffed with the way it's turned out. I didn't expect it to be quite as vivid, and you can only, imagine if you put other colours on there, different timbers maybe. Lots of timbers that we get may have this going on. There might have been a log pile for a long time. Yew is one that springs to mind that suffers from cracking quite badly. We're always having to deal with different things. Sometimes we'll just throw them away because we assume that it's not going to work. So there you go. Hopefully we've saved some timber and given you a chance to make some lovely projects. There we are. Sanding that in nicely. Let's give it a bit of a buff. Bit of dry rag. We'll treat ourselves a bit of dry new rag. I'm going to let this dry when we finish here today, and I'm going to give it a buff tomorrow with a buffing wheel off the lathe. Well, no, buffing wheel on the lathe, but take the piece to the wheel. There we are. Turn it up a little bit. Just being careful, not putting too much pressure on this because we've only got a small amount of nib left being supported. Okay, there we are. Right, again, I'll take as much of that away as possible, being careful. Got a little fine Japanese pull saw here. Just going to take some of that off. Slacking off some of the pressure. I think we're about there. Look at that, perfect. To one side. Right, so one final job left now, of course, is to take away this little nib. Now, you've seen me do this tons of times. We're just going to put the power sander in the chuck. So remember, with this is C-jaws. Everything on this project has been done with the same C-jaws in that 114, the SK114. Equally, it could be done with the SK100, same size of C-jaw. So we'll go down to a fairly coarse grit first. So let's go 120, say. Dust extraction can go on. Nice and quick. So that's 1800 revs there. Using the coarser grade just to get rid of the mark, and then we can go to a finer grade just to get rid of that sanding grit. Almost there. So there we are. We've got rid of the mark. We just need to get rid of the sanding grit now. So that was 180. I want to go down a lot finer. Let's go down to, that's that's a fairly fresh 400. Should do it. Yeah, that's doing it nicely. Nice little shine there. We've lost any signs of work holding. So we're going to add a bit more oil to that area. Alright, and then again we buff that off. Now let me just show you, before we go any further, oh, that's a great shot there, Matt. Sorry, go back to that one. Look at that. You can see both of those lovely markings at the same time there. I quite like the weathered edge. So even though I've covered this up with the resin, the just underneath where the cadmium layer was, and most of the sapwood has rotted away, as it always does. But just between the old sap and the heartwood, you've got a slightly darker line there. I guess that's a weathering line. That looks quite nice. And again, it's echoed through the lines of those cracks as well. Again, if we could go above there, Matt, so you can see these lovely dark areas. That's just weathering, and that's looking really nice. Now, just one more thing before we leave you today. Let me just show you what I would do, say tomorrow, once that is dried. I'd go to a buffing wheel. Now, you can go with stitch mop, you could go with loose leaf, doesn't matter. And then you either go with your pigtail in your chuck, which I do most of the time, but let me just show you our pigtail, which you can use between centres if you haven't seen it before. So it's basically a pigtail. Pigtail is a tapered spiral. That's all we're talking about. So there it is. Okay, just that tapered spiral, that goes in there. On top of that then, put your buffing mop. So this is a loose leaf buffing mop, and you don't need to put anything on it. You don't need to put any polish on it. You can put carnauba wax on if you wish. Alternatively, just leave it. Just use it literally to buff. So that heat and friction to buff with. I'm going to take out this ring centre and just put in a single pointed centre, tailstock, so live centre. Give myself a little bit of length on the quill there. Move that up just gently. All I want to do is make sure that Morse taper can't come out if you're putting a bit of pressure on. Get my banjo out of the way. Lathe speed to 0. Turn the lathe on. And then you can go around and you can buff that finish that you have. I would be a little bit cautious if you're doing the edge. You know, be careful that it doesn't grab. And then on the inside, you can use, again on your power sander, you can use the Velcro backed lamb's wool bonnets to go over those to do the inside if you want to. Matt, can we just have one final close-up of that piece? I just want to show you the shine on the top of the rim there. I think that's worked really, really well. That's all part of the casting process. I just covered the top edge. And don't forget that little trick with the plastic milk bottles, or any carton really, just a bit of hot melt glue to create that wall, that barrier to hold in the resin when you cast it. And hopefully, I think you'll agree that that's turned out really well. Something that I'm going to be repeating. I never realised quite how effective it could be. So that was my take on the Kintsugi Bowl. Remember, it's making the imperfect perfect, or giving you perfect imperfections. Hopefully you agree. And don't forget, join us next time. Hopefully next week I'll be live. So if you have any questions about this, just bring them over to next week. We'll answer them for you. I'll make sure the bowl stays here. So thank you again for watching. If you like what you see, don't forget, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, all of those things. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.